Good morning, Year 6. For your writing task today, you're going to be writing 2 letters, one formal and one informal. All right, before we get started, we need to think about the reasons why Percy was eventually expelled from Yancey Academy. So we're going to have a read of an excerpt below and think about the reasons why. I started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. My grades slipped from D's to F's. I got into more fights with Nancy Bobofit and her friends. I was sent out into the hallway in almost every class. Finally, when our English teacher, Mr. Nicol, asked me for the millionth time while I was too lazy to study for a spelling test, I snapped. I called him an old sod. I wasn't even sure what it meant, but it sounded good. The headmaster sent my mum a letter the following week, making it official. I would not be invited back to Yancey next year to Yancey Academy. So have a think. Pause the video now and have a think about why Percy had been expelled from Yancey Academy. All right, sadly, I can't hear your suggestions, but the reasons that I came up with were he kept getting into fights, including one where he pushed Nancy Bobofit into a fountain in chapter 1. He was failing in all his classes. He was being sent into the hallways during most of his classes, which means his behavior mustn't have been very good. And he was talking rudely back to his teachers. So, from Percy's perspective, what reasons might you give for this behavior? Pause the video again and have a think about what those could be. All right. Sadly, again, I can't hear your thoughts. However, some thoughts that I had. Well, first of all, we know he kept having nightmares about Mrs. Dodds, who no one seemed to remember. As a result, he was getting irritable due to lack of sleep, which he would explain some of his rudeness. It also would explain why he kept getting into fights with Nancy and her friends. He also kept getting into fights with Nancy Bobofit because he was mean to his friend Grover. And even though he studied, Percy was failing his classes because he had a learning difficulty. And a reason he might give for his talking back to teachers was that, well, Mr. Nichols had been rude to him first. All right, so this is what Percy might be thinking. This is the perspective he might be having. So before we get started on our task, we need to think about register or the formality. So we're going to read this letter and think about, is it formal or informal? And what makes us think it's either formal or informal? So, dear Mrs. Dodds, I'm writing to inform you of several complaints we've received from the housekeeping team. Staff have reported that your room often has a strange, sulphurous smell emitting from it. We value the well-being of all employees and must remind you that noxious chemicals may not be kept in staff rooms. In addition, maintenance staff have informed us that several deep gashes appeared in the furniture in your accommodation. I must assert that no sharp tools be used outside the proper workshop areas. So what is the register of this letter? Well, you might be thinking the register for this letter is formal. If you were thinking that, you were correct. We know it's formal because we can see there aren't any contractions in the letter, and the vocabulary of the language is quite proper. It uses proper words, it doesn't use any slangs, and it uses some difficult words like sulphurous and things like maintenance, where they could have just used handyman. All right, so the register of this letter is a formal one. All right, what is the register of this second letter? Dear Percy, I hope you're settling in okay at your new school. You're behaving yourself, aren't you? I really hope you will do your best to keep out of trouble. I know you're a good kid. You just need to control your temper. I'm sure you'll make loads of friends quickly, and I know you've got lots of brains in that head. If you work hard and be kind, you can't go wrong. I am fine here. Very busy at the sweet shop. We'll write again very soon. Love, Mum XX. All right. Well, thinking again, what is the register of this letter? If you were thinking to yourself the register of this letter was informal, then you'd be correct. Some clues we have to tell us that the register is informal. We've got easier language, so more commonplace language. We've got some mistakes with our grammar, things that aren't proper grammar that they've been using. For example, XX at the end, the kiss kiss. That's not something that's technically grammatically correct. We've also got contractions, 2 words that have been put together like aren't and you've and you'll and I'm. We've also got a question tag at the end. You're behaving yourself, aren't you? Right, so that question tag at the end of our clause is something that you would only use in informal language. All right, so how do we create formality? What will you be focusing on when you write your 2 letters, when you're writing your formal and your informal letter?